The man's name was Frank Barless, and he was a restaurateur from Indigenous, Saskatchewan. Mother and two daughters grabbed my wife, and they pulled her in, and they all hugged her, and they said, "You tell Lyle, don't be bad no more, and tell him to deal with his alcoholism and his drugs, and you tell him we forgive him for what he did."
Hi, this is Mark A. Lewis. This is the Sacred Village podcast. I had a very compelling conversation with a ceremony brother, Lyle Bellegarde. What I realized as we were having the conversation is that he was telling a story. So I've decided to start a new series called Sacred Village, Sacred Stories. This won't be the only one. I certainly hope not, because the format I found to be very compelling and very true to what needed to happen in terms of the expression and the ability for him to share his story. That's what he wanted to do. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. This man is quite something. He's been through an ordeal in life, unlike anything I've ever encountered in terms of knowing anybody who's been through anything remotely like this. It was an honor to talk to him. It was an honor to have him as a guest on the podcast, and a real privilege to hear his story. So once again, share this. If you're enjoying it, it's a good way for it to get out there and to rate it and to like it. All these things do help. So enjoy the story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for letting me come and talk, Mark. I'm happy to come and share my story and share my life for sure. Um, um, I'm 55. My birthday today, uh, coincidentally, and I feel great. I feel in great shape, and uh, I got into a zone before I came and talked to you here, and then I'm really in that zone right now. And then I I just feel that um, the connection that we had in or that we have in Sundance and ceremony is it's unlike any other, and I'm so blessed to be here, so blessed to be with you, and I'm happy to be on your podcast for sure. Um, Introducing myself, like I'm 55 today. I'm from a place called Little Black Bear First Nations in Saskatchewan, close to Regina. Um, we are we're part Cree and Sioux, uh, and we I've been I've been on a different. I recognize the can't remember the word you used there, but the difference between you and I, and in ceremony especially, and with you being white and me being more rooted for sure. But I think our ceremony, our culture is open to almost anybody who would like to. Like we've had Japanese people with us there, and they've been sun dancing with us now. So it's certainly open to anybody who would love to, embrace themselves, and look into themselves, and and just always put God first in their lives, and only good things can happen for sure. But the like I was gonna say as well, the path that we both have, um, mine is very contrast to yours, and I know we all have our own story, our own path, and I'll start from where I can, and I've been through a lot of counseling on my own, with a lot of different psychologists and counselors, elders as well, a lot of elders. So I've dealt with a lot of the issues that I've been through, that I've gone through, and I'm on a really well groomed path. I could see that I'm on right now, and I feel really positive in my life. So I was born in Regina, Saskatchewan in 1971. I was born to my Vern Belgard and my mother Doreen Kuwait and Doreen Belgard. I was the third one born. Both my parents were actually in residential school. They went to residential school, and as soon as they got out of residential school, they started having babies. And there's not much of a gap between my oldest brother and my youngest sister. I think it's like 5 years, 6 years, but I'm the third oldest, and yeah, we grew up in Little Black Bear First Nations in Saskatchewan. Um, uh, my rearing was a lot different from everybody. We grew up in poverty a lot. Both my parents were alcoholics at the time. Um, we both I and my siblings. I have my older brother and my two sisters. We endured a lot of trauma as children, and it was really blunt trauma. My my father's youngest brother was our primary babysitter when we were younger, and this man was a pedophile, and we every time my mom and my dad went out to drink, he would come and babysit, and every time one of us would get sexually assaulted by this man, and not to mention the verbal assaults and he's a real like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde guy. He'd be really nice with my mom and dad around, and then once they're gone, oh my God, you know. So we endured that through. I actually I endured that for the first part of my life, my youngest life, and the age of 6, my mom and dad called it quits, and they actually wanted to separate, and they sat us the four of us on a couch, and they said, "Who do you want to live with?" And I'm thinking, we're a family. What do you mean, who do you want to live with? And it just these things that happened when I was younger. They still affect me, but they don't affect me to that degree. But um, in the time that 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 they made that decision to leave, I actually stayed with my father. My brothers and sisters went with my mom, and I stayed with my dad. But I actually chose a residential school, and I went to residential school for 10 years. And in that time, to be totally honest, like it wasn't the horrific nightmare that my mom and dad lived or their grandparents lived. In my time, the ones who lived through it, they came back and they were the supervisors. They were our childcare workers, and they actually helped us. A lot of them helped us, and I know I can testify to that for sure. Like I didn't live a horrific life in residential school by no means. My dad actually ran the school for a while after. So I had great opportunity for sure. Going back to the decision of going to residential school, this is an institution. It's they tell you when to get up, when to sleep, when to play, when to eat. It's an institution, and um, you're segregated to all Native kids, and you feel it when you go to town, when you go anywhere, you can feel it. So I don't think it was the right way to grow up by no means, but we played hockey against white teams all the time, and I grew up in Belcaris too. I'd go visit my dad in the summer and my mom in winter and in Christmas or vice versa. But for the majority, I went through my education pretty smoothly, but I always had that monkey on my back of the abuse and the trauma that we lived through as kids. And I turned 13, I believe it was, and I tried out marijuana. and I loved the effect. I loved the feeling I got, and I figured I had to try it again and again and again, and it just when you say gateway, it was a gateway for me for sure. Um, and then I just at 13, 14, I had my first drink, and it was the thing to do for everybody, but for me it was a different feeling altogether, and it numbed me to a point where I was satisfied with that I needed to feel that all the time, and I know that it's from the trauma, it's from the abuse, going back to the abuse, my little sister's here, and she's not the little sister that went through the abuse. She's my mom's daughter, one of her youngest sisters. But she said we had a prayer before I came in here, and just going through this, it brings up things. I've been through. I've been doing the inner child work, and where you go back to your youngest memories and go through, and almost every time something new comes up. I remember getting dragged into the bedroom, and this is like nap time. It was one of those times, and I was kicking and screaming. I didn't want to go, and he had me by the arm, and then all of a sudden I could feel my other arm, and it was my big brother, and he's holding on, his feet on the floor, and my uncle stops and he looks and he says, and my brother stood up, and I can remember he just said, "Just take me." These memories that come, it's been a long healing for me, a long, long healing, long journey, and I'll get into a little more here, but I just the prayers that I had just right before I came in here were they're very effective for sure, and you just sometimes you just gotta take a breath and just let it flow, because what happened to us as children shouldn't happen to anybody. I learned hate, I learned fear, I learned shame. You're not supposed to learn that at that age, and my brothers and sisters all did as well. So, um, when I learned how to get high and get drunk, I it took over my life. That numbing feeling, that numbing sensation consumed my decisions. It consumed my whole life, my being, and then there was no I didn't really care about school. I didn't care about um work or anything like that. Like I didn't really want to be it was like a slow suicide for me, and I just wanted to party and be so that's how my life went. I I I I started doing time in Paul Dojak Youth Center in Regina. At the age of 15, I started doing almost hard time in in secure custody in Saskatchewan, and I started out with petty crimes, the break and enters, I guess they're not petty. They're like break and enters are really, really serious, and they're just they can affect somebody's life as well. So I'm at a different stage in my life for sure now, but I just want you to get a real clear picture of what I went through and where I am today for sure. But I would get out, like I said, I would get out and I'd be out for maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, and I'd be right back in the either Dojak. And when I turned 18, by the time I turned 18, I was doing the maximum sentence for a young offender at that time, which was 3 years. I'd kept escaping. I jumped over fences and broke out windows, and by the time I left there, they had me in handcuffs in the yard playing with other kids, and I was the only one with handcuffs. And then it was just that's kind of where I went with my addiction, my behaviors, my you know, and I was never really violent. I was never violent, and until later on in life. But um, I turned 18, and as soon as I turned 18, they let me out of Dojak, and they said, if you mess up, you're going to a real jail. And I think it was about a month later, I was in Regina Correctional Center, and because of my alcoholism, my drugs, I was there for 4 sentences back to back to back. Um, I didn't work on my abuse issues. I didn't work on anything. I just let my alcoholism and my drug addiction run wild, and it always ended up in prison. Always. Um, in 1996, I my addiction and my alcoholism was at an all-time high, and I had been out of prison for maybe 2 months, 3 months, and I hooked up with one of my cousins, my first cousin, and we'd been drinking constantly for like 10 days straight. And in July 1996, I took a man's life. I was I was introduced to a man in a bar, and by no means did he have to die. By no means did he mean, like, he didn't do nothing to die. And it was my alcoholism, my rage, my anger, my my fear, everything came out of me at one time, and in that drunken rage, and by no means was it planned, but things happen in a night, and I was actually convicted of first-degree murder. Um, I've been incarcerated ever since. I'm still in a halfway house right now on the north end of Edmonton. Uh, it's been a really really long road for me, really long road for me. And when I say our lives are contrast, Mark, it's very contrast. And I believe my life is contrast to a lot of people. I know of a lot of lifers who are out now, and they're doing really really well in the community, but I also know of a lot that I'll never ever see again. You know, but the place where I'm at right now in my life is pure pure heaven, pure joy, pure contentment. I'm I'm blessed, very blessed to have 2 young children born. I'm 55 today. I have 2 young born children. My daughter's she's only like 2 months old. My son is 18 months, 19 months now. Um, you know, Mark, I just I wanted to talk to you as bros, just like you and I. And when we were in the tent in the teepee, you and I, and 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 I was talking to you guys and sharing. I I got so connected to you guys. Just God gives us people in our lives, and it just it's such a blessing to know you and Bill and Palmer and Trevor. Everybody. It's such a blessing, and where I am in my life is because of you, man. It is. You don't even know. It's because of you, man. In 1996, I went to prison in July 1st, Canada Day, and I've been incarcerated since. I was an addict inside inside the pen. Couldn't be an alcoholic. There wasn't very much alcohol, but when there was, I was drinking it. I did almost 13 years, and I was so tired of it, Mark. So tired of it. It's just monotony, same thing over and every day. So I remember sitting in a sweat, and I just is the third round. And he said, "Heal, try and heal. What you gotta do to heal." This elder was telling us, and I just cried, and I remember just giving my life. You know, I said, God, if you're not gonna let me off, then let me do something here. Let me do something, and I'll show you I can do it. You know, I think that afternoon when I got back, one of my friends had got some marijuana, and he comes and he says, "Here you go, bro." And I said, "You know what? I'm good, man. I'm good." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And I was good. And then he came back probably about 3 hours, 4 hours later, and he said, "I know you're good." He said, "But just keep it around, stash it, whatever, keep it for later." And I said, I'm good, bro. Fuck, I'm good, man." Well, he came back again, and he says, "You know what? You don't, you're not going to smoke it, and just go sell it. And get yourself some canteen," he says, And I got mad at him, And I said, "You know what, bro? If I do this, I'm going to live off that guy's addiction," I said, and I gave him, and I said, don't hit him. I don't want this no more. I told him, And that was after a sweat, That was showing God I could do it. Make that choice when nobody's looking. I can make that choice. And believe it or not, it took a lot, A lot, you know, because I lived like with no rules, like it was just my greed, my own self. But I just want to talk to you as a bro, bro. After the sweat that time, after I made that choice, I really, really tried. I like the monotony in the penitentiary is so, oh my God, it's so it's a torture. But the hardest part of being away was the loneliness, of course. And my family, I didn't have, I lost a lot of my family when I was gone, and that was after 13 years inside the pen that I said that prayer, and then I made that choice, and I had done another another 5 years before I had a chance to go up to a. It's called a faint hope trial, and it's for lifers. So if you're sentenced to life 25, which I was sentenced to, you have a chance to go up in front of a jury, and with from the time you're picked up to the time that you get there, they'd review your whole case, and if you did okay, they'd let you off some time, eh? So I went to this thing, and I knew that the mother and the two sisters of my victim would be there, eh? And when I was picked up for my murder, I was still an addict. I was still an alcoholic. I was still making bad choices every day. I was a liar, cheater. I was almost everything. So my going going to this trial, I I wanted to set the record straight with this family, this mother and the two sisters, and I I remember getting to this trial, and I remember going up the back stairs. I was in handcuffs and shackles, after 18 years inside the penitentiary, I finally get to go and see these people and talk to them, in a good way, and I thought it was a good way, but it was courts, of course, and it was all judiciary, and but anyways, I went in there, and I had a chance to talk to the mother and the two sisters, and I told them my story. I told them the absolute truth about what happened to their son. And from the time it happened, they probably had no clue. They had no clue. They heard so many different versions or different, you know what I mean? They didn't have no clue. And I felt that I really, really owed this family that explanation. And and I was purely my motivation for going for this thing. I already did like 18 years, and it's another 7, before I get a chance. So anyways, I was thinking to go and talk to this family and make it right. And that's what I did. I had that opportunity, and I looked them square in the eyes, and I talked to them. And it was such a blessing because I remember going up the back stairs, and every flight, like I was praying all the way, and every flight, not not the step, but every flight, um, I would hear, "Trust in me, trust in me, trust in me." There's 3 flights, "Trust in me," every time. And it was so clear in my mind, eh? And I knew, just tell the truth, tell her everything, even the ugly stuff. I told them the ugly. My case was almost barbaric. It was barbaric. There's a lot of details that are there if you Google my name for sure. But with my goal in mind to set the record straight with this family, I got up on the bench, and I looked at the family, and I told them, I don't care about this jury. I don't care about my lawyer, prosecutor. I don't really care about the judge. I said, I'm here to talk to you. And I looked them in the eye, and I told them every detail that I could remember of that whole incident from when I met their son. And like I say, there's no way he had to die, no way he needed to die, It's just my own rage and anger, my own drunkenness. I don't want to blame drunkenness. But I was drunk. I drank for 10 days straight prior to that. In speaking with this family, I looked them and I told them everything, and it was like a mountain of a problem right off my shoulders, and it felt so good, telling them everything, and then I told them about how I grew up and where how that led to me taking their son's life, where it came from, and I just wanted them to understand, and tell them that I was sorry. The best thing was that they actually let the jury out, and they instructed the jury, if you can't come to a unanimous decision, we'll come back in 2 years and we'll do this again. And I looked at my partner at the time, and I called her over and I said, look, go and see this mother and two sisters and tell them I don't have much time left. I'll go and finish my time, and I'll be out, and I won't bother them. I won't bother with this, So anyways, she went and talked to them, and this mother and two daughters, they're a Greek family. The man's name was Frank Barless, and he was a restaurateur from Indigenous, Saskatchewan. Mother and two daughters grabbed my wife, and they pulled her in, and they all hugged her, and they said, "You tell Lyle, don't be bad no more, and tell him to deal with his alcoholism and his drugs, and you tell him we forgive him for what he did." And the very, very best result that I could ask for, that I could ever ask for, happened. And I was so, just trusting me. Trusting me. I remember it just came, you know? Oh, man. So I got back downstairs, and I got back downstairs to the cells, to the holding cells, and my lawyer came down, and I said, "You know what? I'm good. Let's get out of here." I said, "Hey, look, I want to go back to the pen." And he says, "Whoa, whoa, wow, take it easy, take it easy. Something good's gonna happen." He said, "Hey." Called me back up there, and they took 5 years off my sentence. And at that point in time, I was eligible for day pro instantly. And that's just from doing the right thing, Mark? I'm telling the truth. I'm doing the right thing, And I got blessed instantly, you know? It's, that happened about 12 years ago, Mark, and I'm still in a halfway house. I went to Sundance to release, to let go of my institutionalization, because I can do really, really well. But when they're ready to kick me out, I can self-sabotage in a heartbeat, you know? And that's what I did. And I went back to the pen for 3 years, and I, uh, I had to go again, and I went back to the pen for another 3 months, and I had to go again, and it's been 12 years since that decision was made. But, I'm certainly not the same man I was, uh, 30 years ago. But when I went to, Sundance 2 years ago, I, I was told to let go of something. They're gonna hook you up to the tree. Marcel was he was actually one of my best friends, Marcel Leroy. And he was saying, bro, you gotta let something go. If you wanna move forward, you have to let something go. And I had to let go of my institutionalization because I couldn't leave. I felt almost as if I didn't deserve to be out, but I felt so different from everybody. I literally lived in a cage most of my life. There was no phones when I went in. There was no cell phones when I went in. So getting out to all of this, I really experienced it after 20 years in Stan Daniels, and then I've been through probably about 6 different halfway houses in Edmonton here already. But I I was sharing with you this morning that, I had a talk with my parole officer this morning, or and he supports me 100% to come and move and be with my kids. So I'm literally on the last seconds of a life sentence. It's been a long, long journey, but when I let go in Sundance, um, when I broke free, I literally broke free, and um, I've been tweaking and just trying to figure out, mm, like I never really budgeted. I never really I was a terrible boyfriend. I never really had a girlfriend. I didn't know I was so jealous, so insecure, so controlling. I didn't know I was like that, and here I am, getting out and I'm 55 now. I've been with my girlfriend for 4 years now, and we have two beautiful children. I've been blessed with two beautiful children. We're all we all have different paths in our life, April, you know, and it's amazing how God can put us together in a circle like that, in a ceremony like that. But when I went to Sundance and when I experienced what we experienced, it's tough to explain. It's tough to really pinpoint, but it's that presence of God, of Jesus. I was we were part of the wolf pack, and I remember putting my hand on a tree, and Trevor instructed me, just put your hand on there and just tell me what you see when you come back. And we got painted up, and we went, and I put my hand on a tree, and the boys were all talking, and they're just and I was trying hard to concentrate and just think. And just the talking that was coming, it was almost all together after a while. And it wasn't just 3 guys, it was 6 and 12, and then it just expanded, and it was just like a murmur almost. And then I can see like a molten sledge almost, and it was hot though at first. And then it come up and it cools off, and then it comes up and it rises, and it represent you could see hair, and it was just gross, like really, really like the ugliest thing you could think of. It was like a big ball of it. And it represented the men's trauma, the men's hurt, all the men in our world. That's what it represented. And it just came to me like that. And then as it got at the peak, at the peak mark, it turned it turned, and that darkness all turned to lighting. The whole thing just turned to light, bright, bright shining lighting, and I could see it over our Sundance. It's like as an eagle, I could see it, and I could see our Sundance, our ceremony. I wasn't even there yet. I could see it, and it just told me, like, for every darkness that you see in life, you're gonna see brightness. You're gonna see that opposite, eh? You know what I mean? And I'm just now starting to see the brightness, eh, in my life through all of this. My mom, she straightened out her life, and she was a preacher. She died a preacher. She's a ordained minister. So I knew Jesus Christ. I knew Jesus right from the start. I knew Jesus Christ. Residential school, we learned about Roman Catholic beliefs, and I always knew about God. I always knew about God and His Son Jesus Christ, but I never really knew the power until I was in that sweat lodge and cried out in the third round to heal. Give me that one chance. Let me prove it. And I proved it. And I've been proving it ever since, Mark? And nobody's looking up to make that good choice, eh? And that's the darkness, the lightness. That's the power of Jesus, power of God, power of our ceremony. It's incredible, Mark. Incredible. Yeah. I was in the pen, and I was just getting ready to leave. And this was after 18 years. And like I say, I was literally scared to leave. I had a panic attack when they told me, eh? And anyways, you know, God works in such mysterious ways, eh? But I'd come home from work, and there's two envelopes for me from two Christmas cards. It was right near Christmas, and I open up one, and it was handwritten, and it was this lady from one of my mom's friend, and there's a verse in there, Jeremiah 27 verse 11, or Jeremiah 29 verse 11. It says, "Fear not, says the Lord, for I have a plan for you, a plan for good, not for evil, plan to give you hope in a future." Okay, and at that point in my life, I just got my minimum institution lower, from medium to minimum. So I was leaving the pen for the first time in 18 years, eh? And I opened up the other envelope, and it was from Alberta. One of my friends from, I was in Bowden Penitentiary for a while, but inside, inside, handwritten, Jeremiah 29, verse 11 said, "Fear not, says the Lord." No, it's incredible, bro. Like, just those confirmations of, God's 100% real, bro. 100% real, and I'll testify that, you know, our Sundance, brother, I tell you, I there's such miracles there every time I go. I see it, and you feel it. It's incredible, yeah. But with myself, Mark, I'm at home here. I'm with my two young children, but I work out of my garage. I make teepees, and I do star blankets as well. So that's what I do for my living, and then, we're pretty comfortable. I don't have lots by no means, but I just, we're comfortable. We eat every day, and we have a roof over our head and everything. And it allows me to go to ceremony whenever I want, and it's a beautiful life for me right now. I've been to I was at a sweat yesterday. I'll probably I go to one on Friday and then probably one on Sunday. And talking circles. There's even my family. I spend so much time with my young family and try and teach and instill. And my little guy, at 10 months old, he was lifting his hat and smudging himself. And there's something to be said there. And that's we all have a purpose in this life, and you know I certainly intend to make the very best of it now. I like I say, we all have a path in our lives. And some can be difficult for sure. And I think most are difficult. And if you can reach out to God, reach out to ceremony, reach out to Jesus Christ, and give your wholehearted truth and your wholehearted everything. Like he knows everything already, anyways. Give it all to him. You know, give it all to him, and only good things can happen. Only good things do happen. I'm a living proof, 100% living proof right here. You know, my life is far from over. I'm 55 today, and I feel like a little boy sometimes because I'm just learning about my ceremonies. But I want to be there. I want to stand in the gap. If somebody's reaching out for God, I want to be there and help him get there. If he needs a ride to the sweat, if he needs to learn a song, whatever it is, I just want to help. And the life that I lived, I dug a hole of so much bad and so much self self bullshit. I just want to fill up that hole with goodness and kindness now, and I'm going to. And that's where my life is going, and that's where I'm headed. But I really appreciate coming and helping, and I hope my story can help somebody. And just if I can help in any way, if I can come do rocks or serve at a feast, I'll be there. If I can do it, I will. Especially in my community, especially anywhere close. So, uh, yeah.